Stop being a passive consumer of information. Every headline you read, every notification you swipe past shapes what you think, what you fear, and what you believe. But what if the real story isn't in the news itself, but in who writes it and why? It's time to decode the hidden messages embedded in our daily news cycles, to expose the invisible hand guiding public perception one headline at a time. We're going to equip you with the tools to dissect narratives, recognize manipulation, and reclaim your mind from the noise. Empower yourself to see beyond the surface and finally understand the world as it truly is. Every day we're told the news is spontaneous, breaking, urgent, unpredictable. It feels like the world is constantly unfolding in real time, like every headline is a sudden revelation of truth. But in reality, the flow of information is anything but random. Every release, every leak, every exclusive report follows a rhythm, a pattern that benefits someone, somewhere. When a scandal erupts, notice what else fades away. While the world debates one crisis, another quietly disappears from sight. Timing isn't neutral. It's a language of its own. The truth can be released in a moment when no one is watching, and that moment determines whether it becomes a movement or a footnote. What if the timing of truth is just as powerful as truth itself? In the media's symphony, silence can be the loudest note. There's a reason why some truths seem to vanish before they even arrive. Not all truths are buried in lies. Some are buried in timing. Governments, corporations, and even the platforms we scroll on know exactly when the world looks away. Friday evenings, holiday weekends, the last hours before the global audience turns off its attention. These are the perfect windows to release what they don't want the world to see. This is not coincidence, it's strategy. It's called the art of distraction. The method is simple. Flood the public with noise until clarity drowns. Because attention is the new battlefield, and distraction is its sharpest weapon. You don't need to silence truth anymore. You just need to bury it under 1,000 other headlines. We often think of censorship as a wall, a hard barrier against forbidden ideas. But in reality, modern censorship looks more like an ocean. It's endless content, endless outrage, endless entertainment. It's drowning by abundance. In the game of narratives, silence rarely looks like silence. It looks like chaos, loud, endless, and meaningless. We are kept busy, not necessarily informed. And while we scroll, argue, and react, the people shaping the flow of that information stay silent, invisible, and powerful. The media doesn't tell you what to think. It tells you what to think about. This is one of the most powerful realities of our time. You may believe you are forming your own opinions, but what you are really doing is choosing between pre-selected frames of reference, options that were placed before you by those who designed the conversation in the first place. This is the essence of what scholars call the agenda-setting effect. The more a topic appears, the more significant it feels. Repetition creates importance. Importance breeds urgency. Urgency becomes belief. Belief becomes social reality, and reality becomes policy. Think about it. One story gets repeated hundreds of times across different outlets, by different voices, in different tones, until it becomes an unchallenged truth. Meanwhile, another story, perhaps more relevant, more consequential, even more human, barely receives a whisper. And because it was never repeated, it never existed in the public mind. The loudest voice isn't always right. It's simply the most amplified. The more you hear a narrative, the more it feels like truth, even if it was carefully designed to feel that way. This is not news. It's architecture. And behind this architecture stand the invisible architects, think tanks, PR firms, and lobbyists who build the skeleton of the story long before it reaches the journalist's desk. Every idea has an origin. Before it becomes a headline, it often begins as a strategy, written not by reporters but by consultants and strategists. They sit in quiet rooms and decide which topics should dominate the conversation, which values should be attached to them, and which emotions should be triggered. They design language that shapes perception, the words that make you nod, the fears that make you comply, the slogans that make you feel moral for supporting something you don't even understand. Public opinion is rarely born. It's built. The speeches we hear, the slogans we repeat, the debates that divide us. Many of them start as trial phrases in a focus group. Every word is tested. Every reaction is measured. From foreign policy to domestic reform, from social issues to economic shifts, nothing is as spontaneous as it seems. This is not chaos. This is choreography, the careful dance between power, perception, and profit. Someone writes the script, someone performs it, and someone benefits from the applause. The rest simply watch, argue, and believe they're free thinkers. One writer once said that the media isn't the fourth estate. It's the stage upon which the first three perform. That is, the political, corporate, and intellectual elites perform their carefully curated narratives for the masses, while the media provides the lighting, the sound, and the illusion of choice. It's theater, but one so convincing that most of us mistake it for reality. And in that performance, every word, every pause, and every omission serves a purpose, but this performance comes at a cost, a human cost. Because the more we live in the noise, the less we can hear ourselves. The more we are told what to think about, the less we think deeply about anything. We lose attention, trust, and the quiet ability to discern truth from illusion. Our thoughts become reactive, not reflective. We begin to view one another through narratives we didn't create, seeing enemies where there are merely humans, seeing crisis where there might have been opportunity for understanding. The emotional manipulation is subtle but constant. Our fears are monetized, our anger is weaponized, and our confusion becomes a commodity. And so, we drift, connected to everything but grounded in nothing. We scroll endlessly, trying to find something real in the flood of noise. But reality doesn't shout. It whispers. It exists in the quiet patterns that don't make it to the trending page, in the stories that don't fit the script, in the moments of honesty that algorithms overlook. The truth is never as profitable as outrage, and that's why truth hides in simplicity. But awareness begins the moment we stop chasing the noise. When you step back from the constant barrage of headlines, you start to notice the patterns, how certain themes repeat, how certain words return, how narratives move in cycles. Awareness is not about rejecting media, but about understanding its design. It's realizing that every platform, every algorithm, and every editorial decision serves a purpose beyond informing you. It serves to keep you engaged, emotional, and predictable. Once you understand that, the spell begins to break. The more you question, the freer you become. Freedom doesn't come from disconnection, but from discernment, from knowing what to let in and what to question. Awareness isn't rebellion. It's liberation. It means learning to see beyond the frame, to ask who benefits from your attention, and to remember that every click, every share, and every outrage is a transaction. Your emotions are the currency. Your belief is the prize. But here's the deeper truth, and perhaps the most uncomfortable one. The invisible hand shaping today's headlines is not just political or corporate. It's psychological. It feeds on our desires, fears, and biases. It thrives because it knows us better than we know ourselves. It understands that human beings crave belonging, certainty, and validation. So it gives us stories that confirm our worldview and villains that justify our anger. It offers a moral high ground in exchange for independent thought. And in doing so, it makes us participants in our own manipulation. The real war today is not between nations or ideologies. It's a war for perception, for your mind, your time, and your emotional energy. And the most powerful weapon in that war is attention. Whoever controls attention controls belief. Whoever shapes belief shapes reality. That is the invisible hand behind today's headlines. It doesn't need to force you to believe something. It just needs to decide what you'll notice long enough to forget everything else. But we are not powerless. Every human being possesses a tool more powerful than any algorithm, the capacity to reflect, to slow down, to question, to remember that truth doesn't depend on who shouts it the loudest. Truth by its nature is self-evident once you look at it without fear or agenda. It doesn't demand loyalty. It demands honesty. It doesn't divide. It illuminates. Stop being a passive observer in a world designed to keep you distracted. You were never meant to be a consumer of narratives but a seeker of truth. The world may be noisy, but clarity still exists. Once you begin to see beyond the headlines, once you question why stories appear when they do, and once you notice who benefits from confusion, something inside you shifts. You become harder to deceive, harder to divide. harder to manipulate. Understanding the invisible hand behind the news is not about cynicism. It's about consciousness. It's about remembering that every system of information reflects human intentions, some noble, some not. And your role as a conscious human being is not to reject the world, but to understand it with wisdom. The moment you do, the spell of illusion begins to fade. The world becomes clearer. The noise loses power, and you realize that the truth was never hidden. It was simply buried beneath distraction. When you see the world through this lens, you no longer chase every headline. You begin to seek context, not sensation. You learn to ask, who benefits if I believe this? And what am I not being shown? You start recognizing patterns of manipulation, cycles of outrage, and the comforting lies of certainty. This awareness doesn't make you detached. It makes you free. In the end, this is not just a story about media. It's a story about human perception, about how we give away our minds, and how we can take them back. The game of narratives only works when we agree to play. The moment we choose to pause, to question, to observe rather than react, the game begins to collapse. Because manipulation thrives on unconscious participation. Awareness is the quiet revolution that breaks it. The headlines will keep coming. The noise will never stop. But if you cultivate the habit of looking deeper, beyond emotion, beyond fear, beyond tribal loyalty, you'll start to see the world as it truly is, not as it's presented to you. That clarity is power, and once you've tasted it, you'll never look at the news or the world the same way again.